Hey everyone, Javon here. Welcome to our camera training tutorial. This one we'll be going through camera 1 and its basic functionality. So before we get into the camera, we're going to talk about the purpose of camera 1. So the main purpose of this camera is it is our main camera. It's our main follow cam. And so what that means is it follows the main action. So typically on a Sunday, what that looks like is you're following the worship leader who's leading that song, or the pastor. It is kind of like, it's focused on the main action. The other thing is that because we are running with a bit of a stripped down kind of setup for traditional broadcast, what we also do is we'll vary our shots and just kind of help to fill out the broadcast with variety. So that means camera 1 will be zooming in and zooming out, as well as catching other singers. My philosophy is after your shot has been taken, so for example, if you're on the lead singer, and we go to camera 2 or camera 3 or camera 4, whatever camera's next, you can change your shot. And an easy way to do that is just to zoom out. And so we're doing this kind of back and forth, zoom in and zoom out. And that'll give you just a good variety of shots, as well as you can do pans and tilts and all that kind of stuff. And so we'll get through some of that in the tutorial, but that's essentially the philosophy of camera 1. It's just to kind of follow the main action. If you're not quite sure what to do, whoever's singing, whoever's speaking, that's kind of where you should be. So yeah, let's get into the camera. We're going to talk about the rig first, and I will break it down for you guys. All right, so this looks a lot different from what a lot of you guys are used to, and if you're new to the team, this is our second iteration of the camera setup here. Actually, we've gone through a lot of iterations, but this is our new one, and so I just want to break it down for you. We are running with a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro, and this is a bit more of a larger camera than we're traditional than some of our other camera setups. And with that, we have a B4 broadcast lens, and so this lens is really cool because it allows us to zoom with buttons rather than having to do the physical zoom, which means they're a lot more stable. And eventually, right now this is in the right controller, we'll have a controller here that you guys can do it from the handle, so you don't have to reach up to the lens. The only time you should have to do that, at least currently, until we get some new pieces, will be with the focus. And we'll talk about focus in a little bit. The other thing is we have a nice 10-inch monitor, so this is really big, nice and big, so you guys don't have to worry about whether or not you're in focus. You can kind of see nice and large, so you're not really guessing. It makes it a lot easier, as well as yeah, we have a really nice fluid head here, tripod, same tripod as before, as well as our communications and our comms and headsets are here as well. So we're going to talk about the tripod first before we get right into the camera. All right, so what we've got here is a Manfrotto tripod. So Manfrotto is pretty much the industry standard once you get into professional. And then they get more expensive than this, but this is more than capable of doing the job we need to do on Sundays, and allows us to get it has what's called a fluid head, which allows us to get really nice and smooth movements with a lot of ease. We don't have to put a lot of pressure or it's not shaky or stuff like that. So that's why we have the Manfrotto head. And so essentially there's a bubble level here. So essentially that lets us know if the camera is leveled. This should all be set. You shouldn't have to worry about that unless something has changed. I know we do use the camera and the camera as well as the tripod throughout the week for other things. So sometimes they might have to do some minor adjustments, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. In terms of adjustments though, right now our pan is very loose. Should we want to tighten it because of preference, there's a knob right here in the center here that you can grab and you can twist. And I believe there's arrows indicating plus and minus, and plus will be more tension, so it'll be a little bit more difficult to move. And then if you go with minus, it'll become a lot easier to move left and right. And the same way you have your tilt. So here, this is your tilt lock. You can unlock your tilt, and then now the camera will move up and down, as well as you can adjust your tension here. So minus means less tension, so the camera will move freely, and plus will mean more tension. Typically, what you want to do on a Sunday is leave this pretty high, and so that way you can unlock the tripod and the camera won't move unless you tell it to. That way you're not grinding the gears. If you're trying to move it and it's not moving, make sure you're unlocked, and then you can move freely. If it's too loose and you let go of the tripod, it'll start to fall forward, so you don't want to do that. You want to make sure you have just enough tension on there that the camera will hold its position unless you tell it to move up or down. And with the weight of the camera, because of the size of the body as well as the lens, if it's too far down at a certain position, it will start moving again. But when you keep it at a level, it should stay in that position. And if not, just add a little bit more tension, or you can lock it off, and so you don't have to keep your hands on the tripod all the times. So that's your pan and your tilt. And then also right here, this is your pan lock. If this is locked, I think I'm going the wrong way. Yep. Definitely unscrew that. If it's locked, you're not going to go left or right. So you just want to make sure that's unlocked. You just have to do one twist. It doesn't have to go, you don't have to screw it all the way out. Just one, you can tell when it's locked and when it's not locked. So we're going to leave that unlocked. But that's the tripod. That's all you really should have to worry about the tripod. To be honest, the settings are usually pretty consistent, and I think most of you guys shouldn't have to worry about that. Only specific use applications on specific Sundays when we're doing a little bit more, you might want to change those settings. But typically, you should pretty much leave it as is. You shouldn't have to worry about the tripod. Now we're going to quickly go over the screen. This is a new addition to our camera. In terms of options at the top, there is an option here, a button here for power. If you look at the top of it, you can see it, and it also changes your input. So if you accidentally hit it, it'll change to VGA, and I believe HDMI is the other option. And then if you hit it again, it takes you SDI. We're using SDI. That is industry standard. These are SDI cables right here. They're a lot less finicky than HDMI, and they don't break a lot easier. So we should have some more reliable systems here. This is getting a feed directly out of the camera. So what you're seeing here is it's a little bit different than what we're sending to the stream. But that being said, it should give you an accurate representation of what's happening on the screen. There is also an additional screen here built into the camera down here, if you can see. And this one is where you do your control. So you can see all your options and settings from up here. However, this is not touchscreen. You can't interact with this. So if you want to change your settings, you have to tap the screen down here and change your settings. In regards to that, this is also getting a feedback from our video switcher. So settings can be changed remotely. So I shouldn't really be asking you guys, or the director shouldn't have to ask you guys to change settings. They can do that by themselves. But in the event that that's not working, or it's being a bit finicky, you can do this yourself by tapping on the screen and then adjusting said setting. Okay, so now one of the biggest changes to our setup is our lens. And so this lens is a broadcast servo lens. This cable here receives power and sends it to the lens. And on this module attachment here on the side, this is what allows us to zoom with these buttons here. And so this can zoom in and zoom out. And if I turn the screen here while I push the button, you can kind of see how that works. And we'll go through just kind of how to use that, the best practices for that in a second. But that is one of the main changes to this. Eventually, we will have a control that connects to the handle, so that way you don't have to reach over here to zoom. So by the time you're probably watching this video, we should have already received that, but then you can remotely zoom from there. It is pressure sensitive, so if you push very lightly, it will go very slow. And if you hit it hard, it'll go fast. And so that allows you really quickly to switch from one shot to another shot in a matter of seconds without having to turn your arm and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the main things about this setup that we really like, is that it allows us to be flexible and fast. All right, so in regards to operation of the camera, I took the stool off, but you can be sitting when you do this. I recommend having two hands at the camera at all times. And then when we have our zoom, we have a temporary zoom control here for demonstration purposes. You can zoom with here, and the only time you should ever have to reach to the lens is to focus. With this lens, focusing is very simple because you only have to set focus one time. So I'm going to zoom in here. Let me zoom in. I'm going to zoom all the way in. I'm going to tilt up, and I will lock it there. I'm going to focus on fob. If you don't know what that means, that's fake pester bob. That's what we call this head here. And once I'm focused, I can zoom out now, and it should also, everything should be in focus. You can tell everything's in focus. And so when we zoom back in, we shouldn't have to worry about that because this is a parfocal lens, which means when you zoom in and out, it will always remain in focus. The focus plane isn't shifting like with traditional photography lenses, which what we were using before. So this should help with making sure you're always in focus. Once you set your focus on a Sunday, you shouldn't have to touch it for the rest of the service unless they are moving back and forth further away from the camera, which I know sometimes they do, but it's a good place to start. When you are setting focus, the best practices are to make sure that you are focusing on the person, not the mic. So this is a very common thing that I see. People will focus on the microphone versus on the eyes of the person. You want to always focus on eyes when you're talking to someone. When you're talking to someone, you often are looking at their eyes, and in the same way, we want to make sure we're always focusing on the eyes. So you want to make sure when you're focusing, you focus on the eyes, not the mic. I know it's very tempting because you have the red lines and outlines, and it's kind of in the ballpark, but just try your best to kind of focus on the person and not the mic. In terms of this lens goes really wide. So this is about as wide as the lens can go. I'm going to unlock the tilt here, and then I'm going to tilt up, loosen it a little bit so I can tilt up. And you can see we can get pretty wide. We can get the entire stage, which is actually wider than our camera 4 position currently. And if we zoom in, we could get all the way in really tight to whoever's speaking. and a really nice close-up shot. I'm going to focus that real quick. And there we go, that's in focus. One thing you want to keep in mind is your headroom. You want to leave just about that much headroom on your person, so that way there's just some breathing room, especially when we go to social media and other things like that. We want to have some room so that way the text of said app, Instagram, TikTok, or whatever we're using is not on their face, as well as it just doesn't feel like they're confined in a box. So that is essentially what you want to do in regards to your headroom. And when you zoom out, the rules for headroom change a little bit, but you don't want to leave too much. That there right there is too much headroom. And so that's where I would start to tilt down just a little bit and leave, again, just about the same amount of headroom there. So when you're zooming out, this is like a medium shot, I would say. You want to leave about that much headroom. When you start to go really wide, the rules kind of change. You're not really worried about headroom because it would be kind of weird to tilt down and you do that. Not the weirdest thing, but a little weird. We want to show in this case, we want to show more of the size of the room. So we're going to zoom out here, and we kind of keep the floor at the bottom of the frame. You also got to remember sometimes we have text and stuff like that, and we don't want to be too high when we do this. We don't want to go like there. So we'll leave a little bit of the lip of the stage there. So any kind of text, any lower thirds, overlays will kind of live in that region right there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go through some example cases of using this camera, as well as just using pretty much any camera, from camera 1 to camera 2. I want you to get in the handheld, the rules kind of change, but when you're using a tripod, there are some moves and things you can do, and I suggest you guys practice as well on Sundays when you're here. Currently, we are only streaming the first service. Second service is a little more time for us to experiment and really get really good at our craft. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in over here. I'm going to zoom in on camera, I believe this one here is supposed to be Marsha. I think it's the shortest of all the heads. So we're going to zoom in on fake Marsha over here. And then what we can do now is that we have this servo zoom option, is that we can actually, in the same move, while we're alive, do a nice slow zoom out. So you want to be gentle on the handles, not to shake too much, but we can use this. And what this does is it creates a little bit more of a dramatic effect in terms of what's going on in the frame, right? It's this really slow pull out and reveal. So usually you want to use zooms when you're trying to emphasize something. So whether you are zooming in for emphasis to say, hey, this is like really important, like focus in on someone. For example, Marsha singing by herself. We're starting in the beginning of a song, it's just the one vocalist, and so you can start kind of wide and zooming to kind of bring the focus to this person. In the same way, you can use the zoom out now when you want to kind of widen the frame, right? It's not this one person singing anymore, but all the other singers have come in, or the congregation is singing, right? So we can start tight and we zoom out and we kind of reveal like the bigness of what's happening right now in this room. And so those are the kind of places you can use zooms to kind of bring that kind of effect in. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some pans, okay? So we've zoomed out really wide. And so the way you can use a wide pan is just very subtle. You can start from this side of the frame here, and you can go nice and slow across the stage, just to kind of, again, give it a little bit more depth. One thing we kind of want to move away from in the next season is just static shots where we've locked the tripod off and we're kind of hands off, and that's just a shot. Otherwise, we don't need a camera operator, so we'll just get tripods. So we want to do really slow movements. You can do a really slow pan, and this actually adds a lot of energy into the frame. I prefer to not use static shots, right? Cameras on tripods, it sucks the energy and the life out of it. If you've ever watched online, you can feel the difference between an operated camera versus just a static shot. It just feels like it doesn't feel, the energy of what's happening in the room isn't translated. And that's what we want to do, is when we are thinking about a camera and you're thinking about it from the perspective of someone in the room, right? And when you're in the room, you're kind of looking around, right? You might hear the drums and you're kind of looking at the drums, you're looking at the different vocalists, you're looking at the lyrics, you're moving around, and we want to mimic that same movement, even if it's very subtle, like you're slowly turning your head, kind of taking it all in. Every camera, every position, every place where there's a camera, we want to have kind of a little bit of that perspective. The cool thing is we get to zoom in, which you can't really do with your real eyes. So we're going to use that to our advantage. So when we do pans, we can do wide pans, but we can also zoom in. I know we only have 3 singers on stage, but this should be good enough here. I'm going to just make sure I'm in focus real quick. and that looks pretty good. I'm probably out, but that's okay. There's a little bit of distortion with this lens. That's another thing to keep in mind. So there's a little bit of distortion with this lens, so sometimes it might be a little bit difficult to judge focus. So the director will kind of do their best job to let you know if you've nailed what we call critical focus, which just means you are in focus. So from here, we're going to pan. We're going to do really nice 2 light handles. To be honest, you can almost use just your fingers when it's really loose, and you can move it across. If you feel like you want a little bit of it's a little too shaky, what I would do is turn the tension up on this. Am I turning it up or down? Down, up. And once you've turned the tension up, now you can give it a little bit more pressure, but because you're forced to move it, it just makes it a lot more smoother. And you can do really, really slow pans across the stage, just like this, with little to no effort. And so we got the singer in the center, and we're going to go right across, and we'll get the last guy as well. All right, so now that we've framed up our shot for a pan, typically what I will say is, camera 1, you can start your move, and then you'll start your move. Typically, we want to cut to a shot and then start moving. We want to start moving before we cut to the shot. So everything's are always in movement. We don't want to have that little gap of, okay, I'm on now, and then I go. It is, we're going, and then I'll take your shot. So you can even start your move, and I'll see it, and I will take it, or whoever's directing will see it, and they will take that shot before having to tell you to get ready. But oftentimes, I'll see you guys framing up and kind of positioning yourself, and I'll know, okay, they're going to do a pan, and that they're ready to do that. So camera 1, you can start your move, and it will start your movement, and then now you're live, right? And so we will just keep going nice and slow across. And this is the simplest thing you can do. It's a really simple pan. If you're again, this is usually when all the singers are singing. You're trying to show that the bigness of what's happening in the room, or just kind of show off the other singers as well, right? And just get a little bit of variety going on. And then we've cut to another shot by this point in time, at which point you can frame up. So we're going to zoom in, and let's say this is the lead vocalist here. We're going to focus just to make sure we're in, and we've nailed critical focus. And then camera 1, we can take a shot again. And just like that, in a matter of seconds, we've gone 2 shots. Okay, camera 1, they're singing. Okay, we'll cut to camera 3. Okay, we're going to go really wide now, and we're going to do what we call a tilt, which is an up and down movement. Tilt is up and down, pan is left to right. So now we're going to tilt up. Okay, cool. Camera 1, you can take a shot, and we're going to tilt down. Nice and slow, just like that. And in that same way, we've done a reveal. And then we can kind of stop here and hold that. By that point in time, we'll probably take another shot. And so really, really quickly, we can switch between shots, and we just get a variety of different things really quickly. And if you're really feeling advanced, you can do your pans and your tilts and your zoom at the same time for those who are a little more experienced. And so in that same way, we're going to do that tilt shot again, but I'm going to zoom in at the same time. But before you do that, what you might want to do, and this is just a pro tip, is zoom in. Make sure you're in focus when you zoom in, right? So I'm a little bit out of focus here. We're going to focus that. That's pretty much in focus. We're going to zoom out now. And in the same move, I'm going to zoom and tilt at the same time. And that's creating a little bit more of a dramatic effect right here. Remember, the zoom controls are touch sensitive, so the more pressure you add, the faster it will zoom. So we're just going to keep a very constant pressure. We're going to zoom in nice and slow on this head here. And we're going to make sure we watch the headroom once we get to this point here, and we're going to stop. Right? And so in that just that move right there, we've done quite a bit, and we've used a lot of techniques. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use zoom as a transition to get from one singer to the next, or one vocalist or whoever's on stage, for example. So if we're starting on the center here, we can zoom out nice and slow, and we're going to start panning to reveal the other singer. And then once we have them in frame, we can now start zooming in to make sure that they're the focus of the frame, right? So if we're transitioning from one person to the next, that's one way you can do it. And that just takes a little bit of practice. I'm not expecting you guys to get this stuff off all the right way, but it's a lot of things some things you can do over time to get really good at operating camera 1. Okay, so the last piece I want to talk about is communication. Communication is very important to have a really well-knit team and a strong team on a Sunday morning. When I started, I joined the team as a camera operator years ago, and communication was just the very, very common thing that was happening. It was actually quite a bit of communication between camera operators, as well as from the switcher or director to the camera ops. And so I'd like to bring some of that back. So if you guys are saying, hey, I'm on this person, the camera operator knows we're not doubling up on shots, and they'll catch a different person. So you can always have that constant communication. and going back and forth. At the Camera One station, we're using these belt packs. You can press the mic on button, the mic will turn green, and that means your mic is on and ready to go. However, with this headset, if your mic is up in the upward position, you are muted. This headset also mutes as well. So you make sure, you might press the button, you may not hear yourself because your mic is up. Once it goes down, it clicks, and then your mic is now live in the comms, and you can tilt it back up again to mute. So you can leave this green on, and you should just, if you want, you can mute like this. Alternatively, you can leave this down and use the button to mute on and off. Just make sure you're not double muting yourself. The other thing is you have your volume control, so if it's too loud, you can turn it up or turn it down, and if not, you can turn it up. And then also the last thing is your signal light. Again, if you need to get a hold of anyone in control or even another camera operator, you can press this button. The light will turn on, and everyone will know that someone's looking for help. The other thing is if you need to disinfect, let me lock the tripod. If you need to disinfect, there are wipes available in the control booth, either upstairs if they're not downstairs, but we do have wipes available for you guys to wipe it off so that you guys can stay healthy, because that's what we prefer your health over everything else. That's it for our Camera One overview. This is, again, our main follow camera. We've gone through kind of the function and the purpose of the camera, as well as how it's built and how you guys can best use it on a Sunday morning or any of our gatherings. And before I let you go, I want to remind you that this, although very functional, is still a very creative position, right? Well, just like all the other cameras, like Camera 2 and 3, there is a lot of creativity that can go into Camera One, and a really skilled Camera One operator is someone who's able to take all those things we've discussed and package it into a Sunday service and try different things. I encourage you to try different things and ask questions and communicate, and that will make us all better as a team. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. I'm super excited what you guys can do with I don't know where I'm going with this, man.